What if I told you that the biggest tennis deal in history almost destroyed the career of a 21-year-old girl from the Philippines before it even really began? $200 million. 8 years. And a contract so aggressive that legal experts called it borderline predatory. This isn't just a sports story. This is about what happens when a billion-dollar corporation decides it wants to own a human being, and the one person caught in the middle has to choose between a life of unimaginable wealth and the one thing money can never buy back, herself. Stay with me because this story goes way deeper than you think. Her name is Alex. Alexandra Eala to the tennis world, but to everyone who knew her before the cameras and the courtside deals and the Dubai conference rooms, she was just Alex. A girl from Manila who grew up swinging a racket with a ferocity that made coaches stop and stare. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, competed on junior Grand Slam stages, and slowly, painfully, built herself into something that the professional circuit could no longer ignore. By 2025, she wasn't just a promising prospect anymore. She was ranked 29th in the world, reaching semifinals in Miami, taking sets off top 50 players like it was routine, and doing it all with this fearless, almost reckless belief in her own game. The tennis world had started to whisper about her. Not the polite whispers of mild interest. The kind of whispers that happen when people realize they're watching something they've never quite seen before. And then, on March 17th, exhausted after a brutal 3-set match in Dubai, sweat still drying on her skin, her management team received an email. Subject line: partnership opportunity, confidential. They almost deleted it. Another fake sponsorship rumor, they figured. Another clickbait headline dressed up to look real. Except this one was real. It was Emirates Airlines. And what they were proposing wasn't a standard endorsement deal. It wasn't a few photo shoots and some Instagram posts. It was total, complete, all-consuming dominance. $200 million over 8 years. Her face on aircraft fuselages flying between Manila and Melbourne. Her story playing in first-class cabins from Dubai to Dallas. Private jet access to every tournament on Earth. Luxury accommodations on 6 continents. Performance bonuses that would triple if she won a Grand Slam. The proposal document alone was 47 pages long, dense, meticulous, surgical. Emirates hadn't just noticed Alex. They had studied her. Every training session, every ranking jump, every demographic she reached, every Filipino diaspora community she inspired. They had run the numbers and concluded something that the rest of the world was still catching up to. Alex wasn't just a talented tennis player. She was a cultural phenomenon in the making. And if they could lock her in before she peaked, they wouldn't just sponsor an athlete. They would own a movement. Now here's the question you have to ask yourself. If someone handed you a check for $200 million tomorrow, what would you say? Because most people hear that number and the conversation ends right there. But Alex's story is about what comes after the number. It's about the fine print. And that fine print was where everything started to unravel. Emirates didn't want a partnership. They wanted possession. The exclusivity requirements buried inside that contract were extraordinary. No Globe Telecom, the Filipino telecommunications company that had supported Alex since 2019, back when she was barely cracking the top 300 in the world, back when betting on her was a genuine financial risk, not a calculated brand strategy. Gone. No BPI, the Bank of the Philippine Islands, which had signed her just months earlier as the face of their youth empowerment campaigns, celebrating her as proof that Filipinos could compete at the absolute highest level. Terminated immediately upon signing. No Milo, the beverage brand that had been synonymous with Philippine sports culture for generations, the one that had just launched a brand new campaign built around her in February 2026. Worthless overnight. And then the most emotionally loaded one of all, Nike. The brand she had worn since turning professional. The swoosh that had been on her chest through every grueling match, every ranking breakthrough, every moment of doubt and triumph. Emirates wanted her in their own custom athletic wear. Their branding, their colors, her body. Think about what that means for a second. These weren't just corporate contracts being cancelled. These were relationships. Globe had been there when nobody outside the Philippines even knew her name. BPI had bet on her as a symbol of national pride. Milo had tied their brand to her story because they believed in what she represented. And Emirates was now demanding she erase all of that, immediately, completely, with no transition period, no honoring of existing obligations, no grace. The Globe marketing director who heard the news reportedly sat in silence for 7 full minutes before saying a single word. And that word was betrayal. Now the leak started. Someone, and nobody ever confirmed who, let the details escape from those confidential discussions into the broader Philippine business world. And once that happened, the pressure that had been building privately exploded publicly. Former athletes started weighing in. A retired boxer said, "Money disappears, legacy stays forever." An Olympian pushed back, "Easy to talk about loyalty when you're not the one funding your own training every month." Social media in the Philippines erupted. National pride versus generational wealth. Loyalty versus opportunity. And through all of it, Alex said nothing. She sat in a conference room in the Emirates Tower in Dubai, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling views of the Burj Khalifa, 5 executives across the table, her attorneys beside her, and she listened. The chief marketing officer, a polished British executive who had been architecting celebrity deals for Emirates for 2 decades, slid a glossy folder across the table and told her, "You're not just an athlete, Alex. You're a narrative. And narratives are the most valuable commodity in modern marketing." Inside the folder were mock-up advertisements with her face in Emirates red and white. Billboards for Dubai, Singapore, London, New York. Her journey from Manila training courts to Wimbledon's center court, repackaged as an Emirates origin story. It was impressive. It was also terrifying. Because the more her legal team read, the more they realized what accepting this deal actually meant. Her social media posts would need brand approval. Her public statements required pre-clearance. There were behavioral clauses about what she could and couldn't do privately. Disclosure requirements around her personal relationships to protect Emirates' family-friendly image. And, this one almost defies belief, Emirates wanted first refusal rights on any future business she might ever launch. A tennis academy? They get a seat at the table. A clothing line? Their branding gets integrated. Philanthropic work? They need involvement to use it for positive publicity. Her attorney called it exactly what it was. This isn't a partnership, it's an acquisition. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Buried deep inside the contract, in page 11, subsection 7, written in language dense enough to make a law professor squint, was a clause that a single investigative journalist found. And when she published her analysis, the entire conversation shifted. The clause granted Emirates perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide rights to Alex's name, image, likeness, and biographical information, forever. Not for the duration of the 8-year contract. Forever. Meaning even after she had served every year, fulfilled every obligation, earned every cent of that 200 million, Emirates could still use her face in advertisements when she was 40, 50, 60 years old. Without asking. Without paying. Without her consent. A contracts professor at the University of the Philippines called it one of the most aggressive intellectual property clauses he had ever seen in athlete endorsement history. A New York sports attorney described it as borderline predatory, especially for someone Alex's age who couldn't possibly understand the long-term consequences of signing away her identity permanently. The internet didn't just react. It detonated. Reuters picked it up. ESPN launched an investigation into whether similar clauses existed in other Emirates deals. Sports Illustrated ran think pieces about whether sports governing bodies needed to protect young athletes from exactly this kind of contractual overreach. Emirates released a carefully worded statement saying perpetual image rights are standard practice at this investment level and that Alex's legal team had every opportunity to negotiate modifications. And technically, they weren't wrong. These clauses do exist in big endorsement deals. But there's a difference between standard practice and ethical practice, and Emirates' statement did absolutely nothing to address that gap. Then Alex's mother posted on Facebook. No press conference, no spokesperson, no polished corporate language. Just a mother, writing from the heart. She said her daughter had worked her entire life to become the athlete she is. That every sacrifice, every training session, every moment of doubt, that belonged to Alex, not to any corporation. That her identity is not a commodity to be purchased and owned. And then she wrote the line that stopped everyone cold. Your name, your legacy, your right to control your own story, those things once surrendered can never be reclaimed. The post went viral within hours. Emirates stock dropped 3% over the next 2 days. Philippine sponsors moved fast. Globe Telecom came back with a revised offer, more money, longer contract, explicit language guaranteeing Alex would always own her own image rights, no exceptions. BPI followed. Milo launched a social media campaign implicitly positioning themselves as the ethical alternative without ever naming Emirates directly. International players started speaking up. A top 10 WTA competitor tweeted, "Read your contracts. Understand what you're signing. Corporations will take everything you allow them to take." A retired Grand Slam champion wrote an essay describing her own experience with perpetual image rights, saying, 20 years later, I still see myself in advertisements I never approved, still generating revenue I'll never receive. I signed that contract at 22. I didn't understand. Alex, you still have time. And still, silence from Alex. No posts, no press, no leaks. Just a photograph on Instagram, 2 days before the deadline expired. She was standing alone on an empty tennis court at sunrise, racket in hand, facing the horizon. No caption. No words needed. Because the image said everything. A young woman standing at the edge of a decision that would define not just her career, but who she was going to be. The comments flooded in. Hundreds of thousands of people projecting their hopes onto her, their fears, their own stories about choosing between security and integrity. And underneath all the noise, the real question that nobody in any of those Dubai boardrooms had ever actually asked her. What does Alex want? Not what her sponsors want. Not what the nationalist commentators want. Not what her financial advisors want. What does she want her life to look like at 40? Will she look back at whatever choice she made and feel like herself? Because that's the thing about decisions this big. They don't just change your bank account. They change your relationship with the sport you love, with the people who supported you before you were worth anything to anyone, and with the person you see in the mirror every single morning. The deadline was hours away. The entire sports world was watching. And whatever Alex decided next was going to send a message that echoed far beyond tennis, far beyond the Philippines, far beyond one contract. So let me ask you this. If you were in her position, if you had worked your whole life for this moment and someone handed you everything you ever dreamed of but asked for your identity in return, what would you do?